And welcome, I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says the US offers strong 15-year security guarantees, but Kyiv wants longer as discussions continue amid the war. President Donald Trump says the deal to end the conflict is closer than ever, but there is still no breakthrough on territory as diplomacy continues. The Kremlin says Ukraine must withdraw its troops from remaining Donbas areas if it wants peace and warns Kyiv could lose more territory otherwise. Moscow says Putin and Donald Trump have spoken ahead of Trump's talks with Volodymyr Zelenskyy, with another call planned soon. The East African community has reaffirmed Somalia's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, stressing that the Federal Republic of Somalia remains a single sovereign state under its federal government. This comes after Israel's December 26 declaration recognizing Somaliland. Syria's agricultural minister Amjad Badr met with Indian embassy chargé d'affaires Renu Yadav on Damascus to discuss boosting agricultural cooperation, leveraging India's scientific and technical expertise and activating bilateral agreements as Syria seeks to rebuild an agriculture sector post-war. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet President Donald Trump in the United States as regional tensions rise amid Israel's operations in Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria. The talks at Mar-a-Lago on Monday focus on advancing the first phase of the Gaza truce as pressure builds around Iran and regional security. Thailand's army accuses Cambodia of breaking a ceasefire by sending more than 250 drones over the border. Officials say the incident raises tensions as both sides have agreed to halt hostilities. Syrian government troops deployed to Latakia and Tartus after deadly protest clashes killed 4 and injured more than 100 people. The unrest challenges President Ahmed al-Sharaa as his new government tries to stabilize the country after years of war. Three Turkish police officers and 6 Islamic State militants are killed in a gunfight in Yalova, with police raiding dozens of locations nationwide. Officials say 8 police and another security member are wounded a week after over 100 suspected militants were detained. Now for this hour, we start with Ukraine-Russia. The head of the Russian-controlled Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant says the facility could resume electricity generation about 18 months after the war in Ukraine ends. Plant director Ramil Galiev says if the conflict were to end soon, the plant could be ready to restart by mid-2027. Zaporizhzhia is Europe's largest nuclear power station and has been under Russian control since March 2022. The plant is currently not producing power and depends on external electricity to keep nuclear material cool and prevent a meltdown. Repairs to damaged power lines are underway and are being monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Galiev adds that major technical issues must be resolved before operations can resume, including restoring the cooling pond and preparing railway infrastructure. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Andy Latham. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Minneapolis. Thank you very much, Professor Latham, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now, as we were talking, that it's good that Russia and Ukraine have decided to cooperate yesterday, but again, it's not as smooth as, of course, we hoped for. So now, how should international law address, such operation and control of critical energy infrastructure, especially around nuclear facilities, when in occupied territory during an ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine? Who should they prioritize, or who should have the voice when this plant is concerned?
Well, in terms of the legalities, this is war, and that's an occupied territory, and it's subject to the international humanitarian law. Uh, but right now, almost a secondary issue here. Um, the big issue is that neither Ukraine nor Russia have agreed on who will control this in any ceasefire or peace agreement in the future. And that's really where international law will kick in. If it remains in Russian hands, and right now there's a Russian head of the regulatory agency that inspects these plants, the Zaporozhye plant in particular. Um, then it's going to be part of sovereign Russian territory, and it will be regulated accordingly. And if the peace deal results in this being turned over or turned back over to Ukraine, then international law will recognize that, and it will be regulated accordingly. But that's the big sticking point here. There's a temporary ceasefire at the moment, so that repairs can be made on the electricity feeds that keep the cooling system working. But it's a temporary ceasefire, and it's an unusual ceasefire at that in this conflict. Um, but in terms of the big sticking points that weren't adequately addressed at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend, uh, the the uh, the possession of Zaporozhye is one of the big outstanding sticking points, along with the broader issues of settlement of territory, for example, and even the stabilization or security force. Washington and Kyiv agreed to this. Moscow hasn't agreed to it. So there are a lot of sticking points, and Zaporozhye is one of them. And it's going to be a difficult one to resolve because both sides want control of that facility.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that. And how might the future of this Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant influence post-war negotiation, reconstruction, priorities, and energy security between Europe and Russia?
Well, as you noted at the outset, that plant is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, and before the war provided most of Ukraine's electricity. Now, the Ukrainian energy infrastructure has been pretty much destroyed by Russian drone strikes and whatnot. So, if there's a peace agreement, or even just an armistice or a ceasefire, Ukraine will have to rebuild its energy infrastructure, and having control of and access to the Zaporizhia plant would be a huge benefit to them. On the other hand, most of the damage that's been done in Ukraine on the ground is in the now Russian occupied parts. So they are going to want to have access to this, and they're going to want to deny it to the Ukrainians as well. So it's going to be a major sticking point, both now, at the moment, for safety and security concerns, but also in the long run for reconstruction. Both sides want access and control of this plant, and that's going to be, again, one of those perhaps irreconcilable, irremediable sticking points.
Yes, we will be eyeing that. With that, I would like to thank Professor Latham for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for a later discussion as well. Now we stay in the region. US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy are getting closer to a peace deal, although the key issues remain unresolved. A meeting was held at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate to discuss a plan to end the war in Ukraine with a focus on security guarantees and the future of Donbas region. While a security agreement is said to have been reached by Zelenskyy, Trump remains cautious, stating that it is 95% done. On the other hand, the fate of Donbas, which is insisted upon by Russia for control, continues to be a major sticking point. Trump has also praised Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has shown support for the peace talks, but it is still unclear whether Russia will agree to any deal. A meeting with European allies regarding security guarantees is set to take place in Paris in early January next year. Let's listen in to some Ukrainians.
Розуму вижив, мені здається. Якщо ти хочеш миру, забери свої війська і йди звідси, з цієї території. Ти ж сам колись говорив, що ми сусіди, ми суб'єкт, а не об'єкт. І ти будеш поважати сусідів. Ну, про яке поважання може?
Не може так ця війна закінчитися, на мою думку, простим рішенням або зустрічю. Щось повинно трапитися глобально.
Now we move on. According to a U.S. State Department official, the United States is pledged $2 billion in funding for United Nations humanitarian aid. The announcement comes after major foreign aid cuts by the Trump administration in 2025, which sharply reduced overall U.S. assistance. This year, the United States slashed its aid spending, while other major Western donors, including Germany, also cut back as they shifted priority towards higher defense spending. These moves have triggered a severe funding crunch for the United Nations at a time of record global humanitarian needs. UN data shows total U.S. humanitarian contributions fell to around $3.38 billion in 2025, down from more than $14 billion last year, and a peak of $17.2 billion in 2022. The U.S. share now accounts for less than 15% of global humanitarian funding. Earlier this month, the United Nations launched a 2026 aid appeal for $23 billion to support 87 million people at risk, nearly half the amount sought for 2025. UN Aid Chief Tom Fletcher has warned the system is overstretched and underfunded, forcing what he called brutal choices over who receives help. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back Professor Andrew Latham. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Minneapolis. Thank you very much, Professor Latham, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, how significant is it that, although President Trump seems to be not very fond of United Nations, and also he has criticized the UN this year many times, U.S. has still pledged to give $2 billion in humanitarian support.
Yeah, I think the best way to think about that is that the Trump administration and Trump himself really, really want to press UN reform. It is a bloated bureaucracy. There's overlap and duplication. There's sedimentary deposits over the decades of arrangements and personnel and whatnot. And all of it, from the White House perspective, is inefficient and ineffective. And the only way to get the UN to reform itself is to tighten the financial screws. And that is the way I would see this cutback. It's not that the US is not interested in assisting with humanitarian aid, etc. It is that there is no way gently to prod or nudge the United Nations to reform itself. So the US, along it must be said with a lot of other countries, are dialing back their financial support and forcing the UN's hand. It's simply going to have to become more efficient if it's to become more effective and if it's to get the financial aid that it needs. So I see this as coercion, maybe is the best word for it, not abandoning the humanitarian mission, but trying to get the delivery vehicle for humanitarian aid to be more efficient and effective at what it does.
Right. Yes, as you know, you rightfully highlighted that U.S. is pushing for the United Nations. Should the United Nations rethink its funding model in response to a lot of reduced contributions from traditional donors?
Well, I rather suspect it's going to have to. It's a simple matter of money in being less than money out. And that's not sustainable in the medium to long term, perhaps not even in the short term now. The UN is going to have to do fewer things, to be sure, but it's going to have to do those things more efficiently and effectively. And that means personnel reductions, for example. It means minimizing overlap of programming. It means doing away with bureaucratic duplication. And these are going to be painful changes for the organization, to be sure. But for it to be sustainable and for it to be able to deliver on its mission in the longer term, it's simply going to have to, because of the financial pressures that are being put on it, not just by the U.S., but by other member nations and states as well.
Yes, thank you very much. With that, I would like to thank Professor Andrew Latham for joining us from Minneapolis and sharing that insight. Now we move the focus on to Asia. China has ramped up pressure on Taiwan after Taiwan's defense ministry detected a Chinese amphibious assault ship formation operating in the Western Pacific. Taiwan says Beijing has deployed at least 89 military aircraft, the highest number in over a year, along with 28 warships and Coast Guard vessels in nearby waters. The move comes as China conducts massive live-fire exercises dubbed Justice Mission 2025, involving the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The People's Liberation Army claims the drills have created a shield of justice around key ports, simulating a blockade and seizure scenario. Taiwan has placed its armed forces on high alert, scrambling fighter jets and launching rapid response exercises, strongly condemning Beijing's actions as a serious threat to regional peace and its stability. Let's listen in.
2月28日举行了全国大选的第一阶段投票，中国观察团同有关国家和国际组织代表现场共同观摩，投票过程总体平稳有序，大选顺利启动。希望接下来的第2、3阶段的投票也能顺利举行，助力缅甸局势回稳降温，政局重回正轨，实现更广泛、更稳定的和平和解，早日恢复国家稳定和发展。
Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Professor Loger Liu. He's Assistant Professor of National Sun Yat-sen University, joins us live from Taiwan. Thank you very much, Mr. Liu, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, looking at this, does the scale of this latest Chinese military activity signal a shift from deterrence to preparation, or is it a primarily political signaling aimed at Taipei, Washington, or Japan?
Me, and I would like to indicate, like your question asked, I think it serves two purposes. Of course, it is the military exercise by the PLA and CCP actually has always been a political gesture in the first place. But this time we have seen something different. First, they have actually enlarged the targeting areas of around Taiwan. It is the closest one that we have ever had, because the closest one actually is only 9 nautical miles away from the island itself. And this actually has encouraged, it has, go into our territorial waters. And this has never happened before. So I think, although this time actually the exercise only lasts for like 8 hours, 10 hours from 8 o'clock tomorrow morning to 6 o'clock in the afternoon. It is not very long, but actually it covers the key areas. First, it cut off the M503 air route that has been a very important one for Taiwan. So now the international flights they have been forced to reroute. So that's the first influence. And the second thing is that this is the exercise that the CCP want the Taiwan people to feel that it is actually will be influence their daily life. So tomorrow we'll be feeling about this. So I think the aircraft or the vessels of either the US or Japan will be circulating around and keep a safe distance to collect the information and data from the PLA for their exercise. And I think the forces around us actually have been very experienced of dealing with each other in the previous round, a variety of rounds of exercises. So I don't think any misfiring will be happening, but this will be the good opportunity for us to observe what new tactics that PLA will apply this time.
Right. And what role do the United States and regional allies do or play as tensions escalate? How should they interpret this?
Well, I think what is important is for the U.S. to reiterate its determination or its policy stance that any country or any party which tries to unilaterally change the status quo is violating the regulation and rules that will not be accepted by the regional players or the countries around it. And that's very important. And secondly, I think the U.S. should keep its policy to deliver the defensive nature weapons to Taiwan. For example, recently we have received the M1 AT major main battle tank from the U.S. and the HIMARS MLRS and all these kind of defensive weapons. And this is very important for us to deter the attack or the military gestures from the PLA.
Thank you for highlighting that. And Professor Liu, could frequent high-intensity Chinese operations near Taiwan gradually normalize?
I think it has been normalized for years, and for the future, we will see new tactics being applied. So I think from now to 2026 to even 2027, when most of the countries expect China will actually take in some kind of serious military actions to force Taiwan for political talk. For the coming years, I think we will see, the escalation of the situation. So this is the time that most of the countries, including Taiwan and India as well, have to pay much attention to.
Right. Thank you very much. With that, I would like to thank Professor Roger Liu for joining us from Taiwan and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now, viewers, we move the focus onto some technology. In a move to enhance the TV viewing experience, Samsung is bringing Google Photos directly to its Tizenus-powered smart TVs. Through a new partnership with Google, Samsung will integrate a feature that curates memories, showcasing photos and videos organized by people, places, and moments. While access to the entire library will be restricted, these personalized memories will make it easier to relive special moments on the big screen. Samsung will also be introducing unique AI-powered tools, allowing users to remix and create new photo styles directly on their TVs. And for those who love a more tailored experience, personalized slideshows based on themes like hiking or Paris will also be coming later this year. The feature will debut on new Samsung TVs and be rolled out to existing models with a software update. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.